Hey everyone, welcome to Political Insider. I'm your host, Brett R. Smith. Joining me today is a good friend and a special guest. Christian Toto is an award-winning film critic and podcaster. He is the founder of HollywoodToto.com and a contributor to Daily Wire and Outkick. Great to have you here.
Thanks so much. I really glad to be here.
So you have two new pieces posted at HollywoodToto.com on Tom Cruise, and I encourage everyone to check them out because they're fabulous. First one is titled, "Is Hollywood Gunning for Tom Cruise?" Tell us about this one.
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting what's going on in the awards circuit. And we're kind of in the middle, maybe toward the end of it, because the Oscars are coming fairly soon. And two different award shows took pot shots at Tom Cruise. Now, listen, he's no snowflake. We're no snowflakes. You can make fun of anyone. Yeah. But the choice of targets is often interesting. And the first time it came around with the Golden Globes, it was one little bit. It was a little bit, you know, it involved Scientology. And I thought, well, that was kind of odd. I mean, just the fact that why would you bring that up in this context? It was just a little out of the blue, but again, not a big deal. And then more recently, Judd Apatow was at another award ceremony and he was hosting and he just teed off on Tom Cruise. And it wasn't just, oh, he's short. Oh, he's a Scientologist. Oh, there are rumors about how he's been as a father off screen. A lot of stuff, a lot of personal stuff, and a lot of mean-spirited gags. And I'm thinking, you know, I could see maybe teeing off on a Harvey Weinstein or some other villain. This guy just saved Hollywood's bacon with Top Gun Maverick. Why would you not only just poke fun at him, but really skewer him? And I thought, and again, just, you know, the two award shows back to back-ish, it's very suspicious. And I'm actually very curious to see if Tom Cruise comes up in a similar way with the Oscars ceremony when Jimmy Kimmel hosts in a couple of weeks. So we shall see, but it was odd, I thought.
Yeah, and keyword being mean. I think it's one thing to lampoon somebody and in a satirical way, but I thought these were mean, and it's like you said, they were kind of on the lines of you know, you would direct it at a Weinstein at this point, like a really bad guy, not a guy who just, like Steven Spielberg said, saved theatrical distribution. That was a surprising video. I don't think anybody figured. It was kind of a hot mic moment. It was an off the cuff moment. Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg were in some kind of a rope line, and they were hugging and embracing. And Steven said, you know, you might have saved Hollywood, or you saved Hollywood's ass with Maverick, and you might have saved theatrical distribution.
Yeah, listen, I think the theater going experience has been a bit of a bump from Avatar, and I think some other films have done fairly well, but it was really kind of touch and go for a while, and we needed a blockbuster like Top Gun Maverick to show that, hey, people still want to go to the theaters. And what Tom Cruise did was he didn't just make an excellent sequel, a wonderful film. He made it extremely apolitical. He made it the kind of movie where you can take anyone to see it. It wasn't, you know, I don't think it's an R-rated movie. It didn't have material that was divisive. And also, he was, I'm sure, very tempted to release it on streaming as the pandemic was winding down. He said, no, this is a theatrical film. It's an experience. It's something that people have been waiting for. I'm going to hold the line. I'm going to wait till things pass, and then we're going to put it in theaters. And of course, as an IMAX film, it was perfect. Yeah. But all those things combined was like, this was a moment to kind of go back to the movies, to cherish the experience, to reconnect with a movie from the 80s, with an old school movie star. For all those reasons combined, it really was something important from a pop culture point of view. And he leaned into it. And what's interesting about Tom Cruise as well, he isn't just doing what he's doing, he's selling it. Yeah, he put out a video a few weeks back basically saying, hey, I'm on the set of my new movie. Just want to thank everyone for going to see Top Gun Maverick. I'm going to jump out of a plane right now.
Right.
I mean, it was filled with gratitude and a little wink, wink humor and an understanding that, hey, at the end of the day, you made me famous. You made me live this lifestyle. You made me live my dreams out by coming to see my movies. And to understand that is really powerful. And at the end of the day, you know, that was what the old Hollywood was, where the golden age stars, listen, they were not saints off screen. They all did terrible things sometimes.
Absolutely.
But the studios would micromanage their PR personas and say, you've got to be careful. You've got to be gracious. You've got to be this. You've got to be that. Now, I don't want to go back to that old days because I think people should have autonomy. But there is something about that salesmanship, about that willingness to kind of say, hey, We have these wonderful lives. We dress up in funny clothes for a living. We thank you. We're grateful for you. And I think that would go a long way in today's culture. Tom Cruise is leading the way. I think that Dwayne Johnson occasionally will do that. He can be very magnanimous about his connection with the audience. Maybe a little bit Kevin Hart too. But they're the outliers. It's mostly people. I think it was Storm Reed was complaining about her show, The Last of Us. And she said, well, if you don't like the gay themes, then don't watch. Now, listen, you could be upset that some people are recoiling at those themes. I understand that. But there's got to be a more professional way to process that, to kind of deal with the audience who may be a little bit reticent about certain themes than saying, go away if you don't like the content. Right. Tom Cruise would never do that. And again, I don't know who Tom Cruise is off screen. He could be a monster. He could be a flawed individual. He could be a pretty nice guy with some flaws. But at the end of the day, you know, most people don't care. It's, are you a movie star? Are you entertaining? Do you care about us? Are you kind of giving the best product as possible? And we will respond to that. And at the end of the day, I hope he's a good person. I hope he's living a good life. I hope he's treating people well. I don't dismiss that. But I want him to be a movie star first and foremost.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what Hollywood's built on, is movie stars. You know, there's a nicer way to say, and I see a lot of stars say this, you know, if you don't like the show, don't watch it. You know, there's a nicer way to say that. And it would be something like, the show might not be for everyone. I hope it is. I hope everyone watches it. But, you know, there's probably going to be some people who decide to watch something else. So I just,
how complicated is that?
Exactly. And that's why it's like, I think that some of the micromanaging that you were talking about from the standpoint of PR really needs to come back into focus. These stars and these artists should not be left alone to just go off half-cocked, because they're stars and they're artists. And what we value them for is their time behind the camera, producing entertainment, which we love. And you know, they're not you know, adept at doing PR in a lot of cases when they run their mouth like that.
I agree. I also think they often have teams that should be telling them, no, that's not the right response. You really meant it, like you said, say it a different way. And also, I think especially the younger talent, the people that are just coming up and rising up the ranks, they don't understand how brutal this business is. They don't understand that if you look back at movies 10, 15 years ago, you're going to see a whole bunch of faces. You don't see them anymore. They don't get work anymore. This is a very, very hard business to sustain your career. And, you know, I spoke to Corbin Burnson recently for my podcast. And here's a guy who was, you know, on LA Law, a superstar.
Working all the time.
Working all the time.
Yes.
Dramas and comedies. He's directing. He's producing. He is a constant presence. And then you can look at someone like Bob Denver, who didn't kind of manage that, who became Gilligan forever. And, you know, part of that is not his fault. We stereotype people. But it is very hard to have a long, fruitful career. And the more times you spout off and you insult your fans and you're abrasive, the less chance you are that you're going to have that career. They should really think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Considering how much money Maverick made for Hollywood, why would they come after Tom like this? You know, was what he created combined with its massive success really that threatening, and why?
You know, in a way you could say, well, listen, when you get really powerful, when you're successful, you're ripe for parody, you're light for humor. I understand that we like to kind of poke a hole in the people who are really powerful and famous in our society. So there's a little bit of like, that's a good, healthy emotion. But I wonder if there's some jealousy here for starters. I wonder if they're kind of, you know, he seems to have kind of maneuvered around everything to sustain a wonderful career. And also, you know, he's not using his clout for political purposes, for cultural purposes. He's not getting on a soapbox. And I think in a way, maybe they resent that. Like, why aren't you joining our team? You know, Sally Field gave a speech recently. She won a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it was as woke can be. And as you know, as much as I've suffered and as much as I've had to work hard, you did it hard. You had a much worse time. I'm assuming, you know, people of color in the audience. You know, she's basically auditioning for her next role. That's how you get a credit within the Hollywood ecosystem. Nick Searcy told me that. Yeah, and he's right. And I think maybe they wonder, why isn't Tom doing that? He should be doing that. Isn't he afraid like we are? Isn't he, you know, worried about his next gig? Well, you know, he's not. He has enough confidence where he's going to keep working for the next 10 or 20 years. He's got that bond with the audience. He's got that sensibility, that taste in projects. And I think he's going to be just fine. And maybe there's a little bit of jealousy there. I don't know. I mean, I can't get in their heads, but that's that's my best sort of armchair psychologist take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Tom's kind of like the last action hero at this point, from the standpoint that he came up in a different era where the understanding was mass appeal. You know,
Yeah.
that was what you were going for. The filmmakers of the 70s, the 80s and the 90s wrote for a universal American audience. It was about achieving that commercial through line, and that's not only hard to do, but hard to do really well.
Yeah.
Are his Hollywood contemporaries just not able to do what he does? Are they not creative enough? Can they, can they write and produce this stuff for everyone, or are they simply refusing to do that?
Well, it's very hard to be Tom Cruise, to be successful, to listen, he has either great genes or maybe he has a secret or two behind looking so youthful. But to stay in the public eye, to stay in demand is very, very challenging. And, I think there's some actors over the years have been able to mostly do that. I think Schwarzenegger was very good at not only being a star, but saying, I'm going to work with Ivan Reitman because he's great at comedy.
Right.
And I'm going to align myself with James Cameron because he knows how to make an action film. And I think that some actors don't have that ability. I often look at Michael Keaton, who's a wonderful actor, versatile. I love him to death, great performer. But there was a long time where he was not out of work, but out of sight,
Yes.
where he couldn't pick the great projects and he was missing when he would select different things to do. So it's not easy. It's not easy to be a sustaining star.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe the other people in Hollywood struggle with that. And I have complete empathy. It's extremely hard. And even the greatest talents make bad movies, make bad choices.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So I think, there's this Tom Cruise and there's everyone else. It's not easy being Tom. And I think he's understanding that. And I also think that in the years past, he would talk about Scientology. He was skeptical of psychoanalysis, antidepressants.
Right.
He talked about other stuff. He doesn't say a word about these days.
That's kind of the last time that we heard him talk about anything other than the movies and entertainment, and how much he enjoys doing what he does, and how grateful he is to all of us to enable him to do what he does.
And maybe it's a function of age where, listen, he just turned 60. Yeah. I'm not going to do this forever. I'm amazed I've been able to do this for so long. I'm really grateful I've had the opportunity. I mean, he's an actor. He's actually a good actor. Maybe this is all phony, but it feels sincere. It's important. And I think he's recognizing how fortunate he is to kind of live this life and be able to travel the globe.
I think also, if you remember that whole Matt Lauer interview, which if you go back and watch now is just unbelievable.
It's tense.
It is. And it's also kind of like he's almost been, he was kind of right in a lot of ways. He's been strangely vindicated in that interview. I look at it very differently now than I did back then, but it's almost kind of like, I remember when that happened, and it kind of overshadowed War of the Worlds, which is what he was out there supposed to be promoting. And after that, it just seems like things changed within his PR, and they just decided to kind of button it down, and anything outside of the movies and kind of fun stuff, things that, involve the audience, we're not going to get into serious issues. We're not going to get into anything outside of pop culture and entertainment. And again, I just think that's smart. I really do. So you have a new piece called Tom Cruise gives masterclass in humility at PGA Awards. Tell us about that one, because this is what Stephen was talking to him about in that little conversation. He was saying, I'm going to get the PGA award. He's like, it's well deserved.
Well, this was an award show. I just caught it on YouTube. I don't think this is the kind of show that's meant for a mass audience. It's more insider, more industry driven. But he gave a beautiful speech. It was long. He thanked a lot of people that he's gotten to know over the years. But it was the gratitude, it was the humility that really struck me about his presentation. And listen, when you have an actor and you've got a stage and you've got a Lifetime Achievement Award, there should be a heaping helping of ego in there. And there was a little bit to an extent. But it really was a thank you. I appreciate you. I'm rooting for the entire industry. But a couple lines definitely jumped out at me. And the one that really did was he talked about traveling the globe, making movies. It taught him we're more alike than we think, and we should celebrate our differences. Now, that may be is the word anodyne statement. Maybe it would be 10, 20 years ago. It's downright subversive today, because everything in Hollywood is about identity politics, how this group and that group, and we're not represented enough, and they're represented too much, and we need to do this.
Separating, bifurcating the audience.
Yeah, and everything about him lately is the opposite. It's drawing people together.
Right.
And I thought it was a beautiful statement. It was beautifully spoken too.
Yeah.
Another thing, you mentioned this before about how the landscape has changed, and you've got these people who can't get mass appeal. Now, here's the dirty little secret. You can survive and thrive in today's culture by being hyper specific about your audience. Stephen Colbert is never going to get a Johnny Carson crowd, but he doesn't need that to be successful. It's just the way the landscape works. You get X amount of people, the checks keep coming, you're fine. But what if you go deeper? What if you go broader? What if you say, I'm not going to just tell jokes for the liberals in my crowd. I'm going to maybe reach out and kind of drag some conservatives along and make them laugh too. You could have a bigger success. You could have a bigger paycheck. You could have a bigger audience. Why wouldn't you even try? The indie films are great and I love them, and some fail and some succeed. But once in a while you get like an Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it made blockbuster style monies, maybe 70, 80 million or so. I forget the exact total. So you can overreach. You can try mass appeal. Why not? Why not swing for the fences? And again, it's that common humanity where it doesn't matter if I'm white or black, what religion I am. If it's a story about struggle and sacrifice and overcoming fears and triumph, who can't relate to that? I don't care about your demographic. That's beautiful. So I think that Tom Cruise gets that, and many people don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, you're basically talking about kind of the lowest common denominator, which is very difficult to achieve. But it reminds me of Greek myths. It reminds me of the Iliad. These stories, Beowulf. These stories have been told for, generations, right? Across multiple cultures, and it's those characters not represented in every culture, but it's just storytelling. Yeah, and that idea of the protagonist going down into the dungeon and facing the dragon, and not only saving the virgin, but also getting away with the gold. These are just sort of like archetypes that I think any culture can get interested in hearing about. So I think Hollywood, if they were intent on listening, they can learn a lot from Tom Cruise. However, I'm not sure if they're interested in listening. And that's what kind of puzzles me. With as much success as he's had, they don't, like you said, they don't see it as an opportunity to broaden their world, their universe, and attract more people. They're angry about it, which is a strange reaction from that standpoint.
I think at the end of the day, when Top Gun Maverick just blows up, every studio in Hollywood should having a meeting. Okay, what did he do right? What did they do right? How do we replicate that? How do we channel that energy? That should be the top discussion on every studio's ledger, every whiteboard.
It was after 1988, after Die Hard, because after that it was, okay, Die Hard in a bus, Die Hard on a boat, Die Hard in a volcano, it was like Die Hard on a cruise ship. That was the idea. Die Hard on a jet ski. That idea of replication, I don't think it's a bad thing, because even movies like Lethal Weapon and the buddy cop movies, those were fantastic, and you let them run out until they're out of gas, until people are sick of them. But I think that's what kind of has been going on with the Marvel movies, basically. So, and they suck up all the oxygen because they take these huge budgets, and therefore you can't have small movies. There was a time in Hollywood when they were producing 24 films a year, if not more. And now what do we get? Maybe we get 12 films a year, if that, right? I don't count, but you pay attention more. But the output is like probably not even half of what it was in, say, like the mid to late 90s.
Well, I think the mid-budget film is also going away too, which makes it more complicated, which is sad, because often those are the best films.
They are. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's funny. I was thinking about the scene in Top Gun Maverick with Ed Harris, where he says to Tom, "The end is inevitable, Maverick. Your kind is headed for extinction." And it's kind of like, do you think it's true in that sense for Hollywood stars like Tom, that his kind is not long for this world, and after he's gone, there'll be nobody even remotely like him ever again?
In a way, yes. I think a lot about that when it comes to Clint Eastwood, who was in his early 90s now. And for the first time, I feel like in the last year, we haven't heard Eastwood's next project is blank. You know, he always had a next thing. So I hope he's well. I haven't heard much from him.
Yeah.
I mean, God bless him. He's in his 90s. He's earned a retirement if that's what he wants. But yeah, I mean, you know, Tom Cruise grew up in the 70s and 80s and kind of has a different formative years in Hollywood. So you can't replicate that. And times do change and the movie stars do evolve, and that's inevitable. So it's hard to kind of replicate what he's done. But I also think that sort of the gratitude and the willingness to entertain first and foremost should be universal. And I hope that there are other maybe talents that are kind of maybe rising up the ranks who are going to look to a Cruise or an Eastwood and say, I want to be like them. Yes. They stuck around forever. And I love this business and I love creating stories, and I love I love my craft, and I want to do that for as long as I can. And the best way to do that perhaps is to follow their blueprint and follow what they did and kind of, you know, use them as examples. So we'll see. But yeah, these are unique characters, and Tom Cruise is one of a kind. So you know, we won't see him again, but I hope we see someone that's someone similar.
Yeah, I hope he inspired guys like Miles Teller and others he worked with on Top Gun, and I think he has. But it's, you know, it's like Maverick says in that scene, maybe so, sir, but not today. So I mean, he's going to be around for a while, and I mean, I think like Clint, he's going to make best use of his time. The guy's an absolute workaholic. Yeah. And the artist is compelled to create. Yeah. And I think that sums up Tom pretty nicely.
Quickly, you mentioned Miles Teller. I had the chance to meet him a few years ago. He was in town for a movie promotion. You know, listen, it was just a 20-minute interview. I don't know the guy, but I got a good sense out of him. He was interesting, and he seemed not cookie cutter in his approach. And I think he's really talented. I think thank you for your service. I always get the name wrong. It was a movie he did maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I thought it was brilliant. And even his silly, fluffy Super Bowl commercial where he's dancing with, I'm assuming that's his wife that you see on the screen. It's a wonderfully funny. I think he has a bright future. I think he is the kind of guy who will not necessarily say what everyone else is saying about certain topics. And I think he's got a really bright future, and he's already done good stuff. So I hope there's more Miles Tellers out there.
I liked Ready Player One. I've got to go back and watch it again. I've only seen it once. And then I think The Offer is what really sort of brought him into focus for me. And I thought The Offer was fantastic.
I've heard great things about that. I've not seen it yet, but I've heard nothing but good notices.
I've watched it a couple times. So, I mean, that's how good it is. And it's to the point where it's like I'll have it on the background sometimes when I'm working. So, I mean, dialogue, cinematography, the pacing. The guy that plays Bob Evans just steals it. Absolutely steals it. He's fantastic. As he should, right? Yeah. And then what's funny is that pushed me to The Kid Stays in the Picture, you know, the Bob Evans documentary, which is pretty good. Yeah. So don't watch it late at night because you'll fall asleep, especially if you're middle-aged. You also have another piece which came out a couple days ago, which is titled "A Mostly Great Week for Free Speech," where you tackle what's happening with the Roald Dahl books. Tell us about that.
Yeah, you know, I think what people don't realize is that there are sensitivity readers across the literary landscape right now. They've been working for apparently multiple years, and they're changing what gets published. And again, it goes on behind the scenes, so we don't see the results of it. But just an example of how pernicious it is, I believe her name is Pamela Paul. She was the former book editor for the New York Times, which is hardly the Daily Wire or the Federalist. And she had a column a few weeks ago that was excoriating sensitivity readers, what's going on behind the scenes in the literary world, talking about the novel American Dirt and how that was sort of the epicenter of this issue. And if you haven't, it's too deep to go into, but just Google American Dirt, what the author went through after she published that book. It's just a nightmare story. So this is going on. We just don't realize it actively. But when Roald Dahl comes out, or his books, the people behind his estate say, hey, yeah, we're going to tweak a lot of these books because they're not sensitive enough. They're a little bit too problematic. And we're going to make them more accessible and more digestible for young minds. You know, that's your warning sign. These are beloved books. These are books that have been, you know, inspiring movies, inspiring readers, you name it. You know, Dahl's imagination has been a wonderful thing for the culture. And now we were told that, well, you know, this bit of dialogue, it's got to go. And you can't describe certain characters in a certain way. It might offend certain people. And there was a bit of an uproar about it. And then the publishing house said, well, we'll do two versions, the original version, this new muted, censored BS version. So in a way, it's a minor victory. The fact that
Yeah.
people talked about it, that people were
Yeah.
outraged. Salman Rushdie spoke out, and I mean, who's
Wow.
a more ferocious fighter for free speech than Rushdie?
Yeah.
And even CNN and The Nation had articles that were critical and dismissive of this effort to kind of whitewash history. So, you know, that was hopeful.
Yeah.
We're learning more about Ian Fleming's books may undergo a similar nip and tuck, which is depressing. And I think in that case, there may be original and new versions too. But gosh, this is not going to stop. So when you see these little victories, you've got to cherish them and amplify them.
Yeah, and you got to keep it going. You got to capitalize on their momentum, and I hope that's what happens with Bond next.
Yeah.
Before we get to Bond, you mentioned Ben Stiller's Tropic Thunder in your piece and how he has defended the film recently. Somebody accused him of apologizing for it, and he's like, "I never apologized for it." He's like, "I'm proud of that film." Robert Downey Jr. has defended the film on Joe Rogan and elsewhere. And it's interesting because he takes issue with saying that it was blackface. He says, no, those were special makeup effects that took hours on end to apply, you know. And again, you know, he's an actor. He's this self-centered, self-interested actor playing another race. They've been trying to go after this for a while. They've never really gotten any traction on Tropic Thunder, I think largely because it's a comedy. But I was very happy to see everybody just push back. And, you know, hearing that somebody from the New York Times is pushing back as well is good stuff. That's a very, very good sign. And it makes me think that finally the pendulum is going the other way.
There are signs. There are more signs. Variety wrote a story about how film festivals are now basically avoiding anything that could be problematic and fearing the woke revolution so much that they won't pick this film or that film because if there's blowback, it'll be disturbing to them. They could get canceled, whatever you want to call it. So when Variety kind of sounds the siren, it does matter because that's a aggressively left-leaning outfit, which has up until now had very little concern or dismay over woke isms or cancel culture. They seem just fine with it. And now they're kind of starting to realize, gosh, maybe this is not a good idea. Maybe squelching art, maybe forcing people to self-censor. Maybe it's not such a good thing. So that's important. And that's you got to embrace the minor victories for sure. And, you know, having Ben Stiller speak up for his own work is the right thing. And a quick note, the Robert Downey Jr. Joe Rogan chat about this topic and others as well came just before, I guess maybe a few weeks before the George Floyd death. And I really wonder if he had that conversation after Floyd's death, if he would have said exactly the same thing. I think not. I think he would have been much more conciliatory and apologetic, but I don't know. I don't know what's in his heart, but I think the timing was interesting.
So now we have James Bond, and you know, Bond's obviously evolved over the years. I mean, I remember when it transitioned from Roger Moore to Dalton, and the Cold War was dissolved, was basically coming to an end, and the wall came down, and there were talks about a more modern Bond. The talk back then was trying to make more of a sensitive Bond and more sensitive to the times. And that also was kind of the talk when Pierce Brosnan came around. How do you make a modern Bond? But at this point, you know, it's not about what they're putting on the screen. They're going back to the source material. They're going back to Ian Fleming's books. And they're also under attack by woke sensitivity readers. And it's interesting what they're going after because it's just basically descriptions about characters largely, and also Bond's dialogue, which, you know, that's pretty crucial stuff, man. And it just makes me wonder, you know, are writers around the world, whether they're reporters or journalists or fiction or nonfiction, they've all got to be wondering, is this going to happen to me someday?
They should be wondering if that's going to happen to them someday, because that's where things lead if we don't kind of hold the line. You know, some of the changes to the Bond stories that are the examples I've read are minor. Others aren't as minor. But I mean, the bottom line is that you're taking a dead author and you're changing his work without his permission. And just one note, I read that the Fleming estate said that the author himself he approved of some of these changes. Well, he died, I think, in 1964.
Right.
I guarantee he had no idea what was going to happen in the next 50, 60 years as far as the culture is concerned. I don't think he was thinking on his deathbed, gosh, I wish I hadn't been so dramatically aggressive with my description. I mean, it's absurd. So just discount that on its face. And, you know, you also wonder, why do these things happen? Like, what sparked it? Was someone within the estate thinking, oh gosh, I read the books recently and they feel a little crude? Like, how did it happen? And also, who is impacted by this? There are millions of books out there. And of course, Fleming's books still draw a crowd and we still care about them. But you can not read them, or you could read them and get disgusted and put them down. But, you know, when you read how they're being changed, it's just making them bland. And you really want to, I mean, you know, you're a writer, you want to have some pop to what you say. And, you know, if you're a comedian, just changing one word or even an inflection can change everything about what you're saying.
Yeah, you're right.
And when I write, I constantly go back and I strip away and I strip away. And I think, what would be a better word to use here? That's the art of writing. And I'm not Ian Flemming by any stretch, but for every writer, it's a battle.
Yeah.
And just the idea of it is awful. And, you know, a few years ago, The King's Speech came out, a very good film, won Best Picture. It was one of those sort of made money, was artistic. It kind of checked a lot of boxes. And I remember they wanted to put out a PG-13 version of it because it was R-rated and there was a couple F-bombs probably.
Right, it was language.
And I feel like Hollywood was like outraged. You can't censor this. And it was so ridiculous. And the two movies would be, you know, it wouldn't like erase the first film and it would be a limited release. And we're just like, hey, we want more people to see it. It didn't seem like a big deal to take out a couple of expletives, but the creative community was outraged by it. And now today, most of them are silent. They're afraid.
Which brings me to my second question. Do you think, like with the Roald Dahl books, there will be a backlash over censoring Fleming's work? And do you think that the Broccoli's, who produced the Bond films, will stand up for their source material, you know, Ian Fleming's original work?
You know, I don't think the Broccoli's have commented publicly on it, and the story is a couple of days old. So I wonder if they're kind of thinking behind the scenes. Do we step our toe into this maelstrom? I don't know. But listen, these are the warning shots. Like I said before, the sensitivity readers have been toiling behind the scenes where we don't really know about it for the most part. You know, unless you're kind of involved in literary, you know, publishing, and you kind of know what's going on behind the scenes. This is when it's going public. And so there has been some, you know, outrage about it, and it's appropriate. I don't know. I don't know what happens next. I mean, Team Broccoli's already on its heels because you got to make Bond woke. Maybe it's going to be a person of color who's going to be the main character. They've already said we're not going to have a female Bond. That's, you know, out of the question.
Right.
But, you know, look at the last couple Bonds. Bond's all of a sudden no longer a ladies' man. He's devoted to one woman. He's, you know, he's monogamous. That's not Bond. And by the way, why can't we have a Bond who flirts with women? Why is that a big deal? If you had a female action hero and she has a one-night stand with a dude, who cares? She's not a moral example that we have to live up to. It's James Bond. He kills people. He saves the day. And yeah, he's a bit of a jerk sometimes and a flirt, and he could be, you know, dismissive of women sometimes because he's a flawed character. Why do we need him to be a Boy Scout? It's so strange, but that's where we are.
Yeah, it is. This idea that the protagonist has to be liked, has to be this Boy Scout. It's bizarre to me. Ian Flemming once described his books basically being for warm-blooded heterosexual men and not schoolboys. There has been an announcement from Viacom, who said that under no circumstances will they censor or edit the entertainment under their roof. And that's Paramount. You know, we're talking James Bond, we're talking RoboCop, we're talking the Kentucky Fried Movie, we're talking Airplane. I mean, a lot of comedies under the roof of Viacom, which would be never made today. I mean, it's never going to happen, you know. And so, you know, but this is great news, okay? And I applaud them because they're one of the only media giants who has actually come out and said so. And also, if you go on Pluto TV and you go to the which is Viacom, it's a free app. You get all kinds of free stuff, free channels and free entertainment that's under their banner. They have a news a section which is gosh, they have Newsmax, they have The First, they have OAN, they have all of the conservative channels, Real America's News, everything. And they always run a little disclaimer every once in a while that says, you know, the views and opinions of these shows are not, you know, Viacom's, and they're, you know, not responsible for anything, basically. I like those disclaimers. I wish that media giants would play more of them in order to allow the proliferation of more content and more creative stuff and less censoring. However, I do encourage people to buy hard copies of their favorite entertainment, because like we've been talking about, we're talking about books, but you never know when they're gonna, they start with Mark Twain and then they move on to Disney's Song of the South. I mean, you can't even find copies of that stuff. And if you do on eBay, it's really, really expensive. Now they've, just like they disappeared Song of the South, now they've disappeared Splash Mountain. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been up and down Splash Mountain, and given the bird to the camera, and then they don't show anything. It just says image unavailable. that was my group of guys. That was me and my friends. But in light of this decision with Bond, again, I say it's important for people to go out and own hard copies, be it books, comics, music, movies, or TV series. I just bought season 1 and 2 of Moonlighting. Do you agree? Do you think it's important to back up with hard copies, because the woke mob, they're never going to stop?
I mean, I do think it's important, and I think it's smart, but I just don't think we can stop there. I don't think we can say, okay, I got my stash, let the culture move on apace. I mean, I think it's kind of a dual path forward, where, you better get some stuff and make sure that things don't change. But also you've got to rally the troops and get people engaged and aware of what's going on, and stop this from going on. Stop, let's buy all the stuff and make sure we don't need to buy all this stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. No, it's great. That's a great plan of attack. Sadly, we're out of time. Christian, go ahead and give everyone your social media coordinates, as well as where they can find you and your work and what you're up to.
Well, my website is hollywoodintoto.com, and my podcast is the Hollywood in Toto podcast. Just relaunched, got a triple batch of new episodes, and we'll have a new episode each week, talking to Corbin Burnson, John Nolte, Sasha Stone, some really interesting folks, Mike Barron, who's just been in the censorship wars like you wouldn't believe. You got to hear those stories. It's heartbreaking, and I really appreciate what Mike is doing. He's surviving, he's winning, but it's a battle. So definitely check that out. And on Twitter, I'm at Hollywood in Toto.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. We'll love to have you back.
My pleasure.